It's possible you've never even heard of Juneteenth, but for many Americans, it's one of the most meaningful holidays on the calendar. On June 19, 1865, as the Civil War ended, African Americans were finally, officially, set free in Texas. The Union was made whole. To mark Juneteenth, we made a trip to the African American Civil War Museum here in Washington, where curator Harry Jones explained how the holiday was made possible both by black soldiers and American ideals.
The story of emancipation is the story of a disenfranchised, enslaved population who, in league with the Constitution of the United States, freed themselves while helping to save this union.
But the direct participation of African Americans in their own emancipation would have to clear several hurdles. First, there were fears over what armed slaves might do, since the slave revolt in Haiti had been led by men trained by the French army.
So here in the United States, they did not want to make the same mistake. So the law on the books when the Civil War begins banned the enlistment of men of African descent into the federal army, or the federal militia as it was called.
But that would change a year into the war when the Union Army on the edge of the Confederate capital was sent into retreat.
And that humiliating defeat would lead Congress to pass the Militia Act of 1862, granting President Lincoln the authority to employ persons of African descent in any military capacity for which he saw fit.
But still, Lincoln doesn't employ them. His Secretary of State, William Seward, warns him it won't look good.
Seward argued that they had just suffered the greatest disasters of the war, and if the president issued the proclamation after those humiliating defeats, quote, "It will be viewed in the mind of the people as the last measure of an exhausted government, a cry for help, the government stretching out its hands unto Ethiopia instead of Ethiopia stretching out her hands unto the government," close quote. Ethiopia was used to refer to African Americans in the 19th century. Secretary Seward is advising President Lincoln to wait for a military success to mask what he believed the voters would view as a cry for help. And Lincoln decides to wait for military success before issuing an Emancipation Proclamation.
That military success comes at Antietam. Only then does Lincoln invite African Americans to fight and promises emancipation in the southern states if the Union can manage to win the war.
And African Americans are mobilized. It would lead General Benjamin Butler to write, quote, "Better soldiers never shouldered a musket," close quote. They demonstrated they could fight. And the tides changed drastically.
More than 200,000 African Americans joined the fight against the rebels, and each time a state was brought into the Union, African American soldiers were there to see their countrymen freed, until on June 15, 1865, the final rebel forces surrendered in Texas.
And on the very next day, June 16th, Texas is brought back into the Union, and on June 16th, 1866, the elders in Texas celebrated with Juneteenth balls.
The lesson of Juneteenth, Jones says, is that governments don't decide people's fate so much as they provide a setting for the people themselves to drive their country's history.
As citizens of this nation, we must understand that we must act. Government just doesn't come and do it for us. Government gives us the situation, the system by which we can do it for ourselves. And this story, what I want people to leave with, is this is a story of Americans acting within the governmental system to free themselves, even though they could not vote and they were enslaved. Still, in league with the Constitution of the United States, they were able to free themselves.
There are Juneteenth celebrations on Wednesday here in the district and throughout the country. The internet will guide you to them. That's it for us for tonight. We will fold things up. Hope to see you back here tomorrow.